Well, certainly the government doesn't want the public to know that inflation is created by government, because then they might oppose it, obviously, because it's a tax. They want to blame inflation on the public, on greedy corporations, gouging their customers, on OPEC for raising the price of oil, speculators for trading in commodities, sometimes even maybe greedy unions demanding higher wages. The government wants to point the finger at everybody but itself. And, part of the problem is inflation sometimes, instead of causing prices to go up, it prevents them from falling. And so we don't actually see the harmful effects of inflation, because you don't realize how much lower your cost of living would otherwise have been absent government-created inflation. Because the beauty of capitalism, what little we have left in this country, is that capitalism is a force that leads to abundance, that leads to efficiencies and economies of scale. And so normally in a capitalist economy, the cost of goods and services is going down, and that means our standard of living is going up because we can afford to buy more stuff. But when the government creates inflation, oftentimes it prevents those benevolent price declines from happening, but we don't complain about it because we don't realize the benefit that we never enjoyed. So, if prices go up by 2%, but they should have gone down by 5%, the government says, oh, we have 2% inflation, but we don't. We have 7% inflation. Prices are 7% higher because the government inflated the money supply than what they would have been had the government not created the inflation in the first place. Well, there's only one reason that anybody suffers from inflation, and that's because of the government. Government is created by inflation. It's a creature of government. In fact, it's simply a stealth way that the government taxes us. Because inflation, by definition, is the expansion of the money supply. I mean, to inflate literally means to expand. People normally think about prices, but you can't expand a price. It's the money supply that expands. But when you increase the supply of money, you diminish the value of that money. And now more money is required to buy goods and services. And so the price of those goods and services rises to reflect the additional money. So it's the increase in price is merely a result of the inflation that is created by government, specifically the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve is expanding the money supply, but the government is ultimately spending that money supply into circulation when it sends out checks without collecting tax revenue, right? You have these big budget deficits. Where does the government get a lot of the money to spend if it's not collecting it in taxes, and it's getting it from the government that is simply creating it out of thin air? Well, the government needs money to spend, and it has two ways of getting that money. One is the honest way. It can take it from us through taxation, right, where the government literally takes money out of our paychecks so we have less money to spend. Or they can persuade us to loan them the money, which again, we take money that we could have spent and we loan it to the government, and the government spends it instead. Now, of course, that represents a claim on future taxpayers, which are ultimately going to have to pay taxes to the government so the government can pay me back the money it borrowed. But in either of those two ways, taxation or legitimate borrowing, money is sent from the private sector to the government, and then the government puts it back into the private sector. So there is no net increase in the money supply, but there is a net reduction in my personal money supply, because money that I send to the government cannot be spent by me. But I have less to spend, so I get less stuff. The other way the government can pay for spending is just by printing money, and then it gives that newly printed money to somebody else to spend it. But when that happens, even though the government didn't take my money, the government took my purchasing power, because now the people who got that newly printed money, they go out into the marketplace and spend it. They compete with me to buy goods and services, and that drives up the price of those goods and services. And that additional price basically is the equivalent of a tax. So let's say the government takes 10% of my money in taxes, and now I have to reduce my spending by 10% because I only have 90% of my money. So I buy less stuff. But if the government leaves me with all my money, but just prints up the equivalent of 10% of my money and gives it to another person. And now that person goes and buys goods and services, and the price of those goods and services go up by 10%. I now have to reduce my spending by that same 10% because I don't have an unlimited amount of money. Things now cost more.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.